Thank you for joining us for the 4th Annual Global Summit on Kidney Innovations, Global Kidney Patient Voice, the Key to Accelerating Innovation, a collaborative partnership between the American Association of Kidney Patients and the George Washington School of Medicine and Health Sciences. My name is Kevin Fowler, and I'm a former board member for the American Association of Kidney Patients, and I continue to serve as a AAKP Ambassador for the state of Missouri. I'm also someone living with kidney disease, having received a preemptive kidney transplant in 2004. And based upon my experience of living with the consequences of polycystic kidney disease and facing the reality of kidney failure, my goal was to avoid dialysis by receiving a preemptive transplant. And my hope for all individuals suffering from kidney disease and facing kidney transplant is for them never need to go on dialysis and to receive a preemptive transplant, so that a preemptive transplant becomes more the norm rather than the exception as it is right now. And as a fellow patient advocate, or as a fellow patient, I have a deep passion for patient advocacy and patient engagement in the production and device lifecycle of novel treatments that answer the need and preferences of patients and their families. And those that are going through the journey of kidney disease firsthand, who really know what it's all about. This passion has led me into a career spanning over 30 years in both commercial and research and development roles for commercial enterprises. In addition to my role with the AAKP, I'm also the patient editor for the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology, CJSN. I'm also on the board of directors of the Kidney Health Initiative, which is a public-private partnership between the American Society of Nephrology and the US FDA. KHI has a mission to catalyze innovation and development of safe and effective patient-centered therapies for people living with kidney diseases. And for today's session on Global Kidney Patient Voice, the key to accelerating innovation, industry efforts across the globe advancing kidney patient care, I had the pleasure of conducting a series of interviews with national and global companies in the kidney space that are leading the effort to disrupt the status quo by making an investment in new treatments to address the many unmet needs of people living with kidney diseases, while also working tirelessly to integrate the patients and their unique insights along the way. In full disclosure, based upon my professional background working with life science companies, I have consulted for some of the organizations that I have interviewed. I enjoyed speaking with all these industry representatives across the globe and ask you to join me in watching excerpts of these interviews. Full interviews will be available post-Global Summit on demand on AAKP's social media platforms and YouTube channel. Thank you, and I hope you're just as inspired listening to these discussions as I was conducting them.
It's so fundamental to the clinical trial process that actually what we're developing is because it's needed and wanted and will be used. It's such an expensive and long process to develop new treatments. And we need to know as pharma, but even more importantly, our regulators, the FDA and EMA, and our payers want to know that we're creating something because it is an unmet need, and that people who have that need actually really want that particular treatment. So it's essential for individuals and community groups to be saying, this is what we need, this is what we want. And we want to work with you to develop it.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think it's very important to basically create something on an individual level as well as in a group. And I want to share an example I experienced personally, because when I was in the type 1 field, one of the side effects is diabetic ketoacidosis, which is life-threatening. So there were already continuous glucose devices out. So pretty simple devices where you can measure your blood sugar levels over the whole day and it gets reported. And there was an idea that ketone measurement would basically improve so much also the outcomes for people with type 1 diabetes. So why not combining the sensors Why not having one sensor who can measure both? And it was a long, long struggle. But what you see now is such a device just came to market. And it came to market because the full type 1 community stood behind it and really said, we want to have that improvement. And that triggered a whole diagnostic company to change their behavior and develop it for patients, for people with type 1 diabetes. And the same holds true as well for people with CKD. Be really together. You are the consumers. If you buy or you don't buy, you have power. Do it on your individual level, but also do it together in groups where you're even stronger.
First, I'm going to talk about my professional development and then the kidney piece. So I started my career working with the disability community. And that's where I first heard the mantra, nothing about us without us. And really that whole lens actually inspired me to go to law school and get the tools to improve the health of marginalized communities and just shaped how I work with others. So when I think about that phrase, I actually can't think of a more meaningful area to improve health and be a part of it than in clinical trials. So truly, if we're working on behalf of improving the health of a community and developing a treatment, the community should be involved. Nothing about us without us. And then in thinking about kidney patients, first of all, actually, both of my parents have chronic kidney disease associated with type 2 diabetes. And I was introduced to the kidney community really through AAKP once I started at Bayer 4 years ago. And it is the involvement in the community and the community groups such as AAKP that really excites me for the opportunity to work in this space, nothing about us without us, both with the patient orgs and people who have kidney disease.
Yeah, and I also want to add to that. And I also like to start with a personal experience because when I started my career, I started with diabetes. And diabetes and kidney disease are very closely linked, as you all know. And I think when I went to type 1 diabetes in my second step of my career, it was very important and very clear to me when I was sitting at a dinner together with Per-Henrik Group from Finland, a professor in Finland, a nephrologist, as well as an endocrinologist. And he told me, people with type 1 diabetes, when do you think the average time, basically when they are dying? And I was completely wrong. He told me 41. At that time, I was 38 and was thinking, if I would have now type 1 diabetes and I would have CKD, I would have 3 years to live. And that also triggered my point when I said, yes, we have to do something. We have to improve really lives for people with kidney disease. For instance, we are looking really right now also in the pediatric phase, also in Bayer, and really looking what can we do in the pediatric space. And we really collaborating with trial networks in the US as well as in Europe, where really the patient voice matters. And that's the point. Important to improve lives. And that's what we're here for. For me, it's very important to really learn what others have been doing. And I think everybody knows is one of the most recent examples, the COVID vaccines. But basically, because people wanted to participate in a clinical trial, these trials were very quick, recruited very quick, read out very quick. And basically the vaccines were into the market fairly quicker what we have experienced before. And that's very important for pharmaceutical industry because time matters. And time matters. If you're more efficacy, if you're better and getting outreach with patients, having quicker patients engaged, have quicker patients engaged into clinical trials, and you listen and adapt also your learnings in the trials, that gives you a shorter trial time. It gives, for instance, as well, the patient a better life if treatments work. And for pharmaceutical industry, of course, it's also a better return of investment because we're getting trials quicker. Shorter trial duration means less money, and that means more opportunities we can foresee. And that's a win-win on the one hand side for patients as well as for pharmaceutical industry. But maybe, Melissa, you want to add to it from your US experience and also from your global experience right now.
So in terms of best practices, 3 things really stand out: co-create, co-develop, and partner. And actually, AAKP is a great example of that. As Bayer, we have been working very closely with the AAKP for several years now. And in particular, when I think about best practices, our recent work together to enhance diversity in clinical trials demonstrates those 3 things: co-create, co-develop, and partner. And we cannot authentically and really meaningfully reach out to communities who have not been engaged enough by us for clinical trials without a leader like AAKP. So we are partnering together to have a meaningful engagement, and that includes grassroots efforts, and it includes co-developing and co-creating materials. And this is one that we're hearing more and more when the conversation about clinical trials and diversity in clinical trials has actually become a national priority. So we know that our clinical trials should represent the population of people impacted by that condition. And to your point, what we're hearing is that people are not being asked. So what can be done? How do we shift that so that patients are then going to their physicians and saying, what about this? And where are they going to get the information? I'll give you an example of what I saw work very well in the hemophilia world. And before I came to Bayer, I had started a nonprofit in hemophilia. My oldest son has severe hemophilia, and I started a community organization in New York City. And in that space, so 3 things have been very powerful to shift that conversation. It's seeking information, asking your physicians, and sharing it. And so I'll talk about all 3 real briefly. In the seeking space, there's now more and more places where individuals can go to get the information. And the first stop is often the community group that you're associated with. And AAKP is a great example. Your patient advocacy group that you're already working with and a part of is often a first stop to get the information. But you can also go to the website that has it all, clinicaltrials.gov. They're all listed there. And then individual pharmas like Bayer have sites for their own studies. So you can proactively get this information. And I'm not saying that's an easy, seamless process, but certainly can be done. It is out there. So seek is number 1. Number 2 is ask. Ask your healthcare professional, because the more you ask, the more people will be thinking. Your healthcare professionals will then be prepared, not just for you, but for others who they are seeing to answer that question. So ask, continue to ask every time. And then number 3, share. There's probably nothing more powerful than sharing this information with your peers. It is people in your community who want to know the latest of what the opportunities are. So the more you share, the more this conversation will become a regular part of our conversations. Thank you.
Yeah,
Markus,
absolutely, Melissa. And I
other thoughts?
think to add to that, I think you already hit the nail here, but I think it's so engaging to really get something back and really share, because if you open yourself up, you will see a lot in your community have similar things. So have also CKD, have maybe CKD and heart failure, share similarities with you, and sharing and really knowing about your disease, educate yourself on the disease, ask questions to the caregivers. It's so important. A lot of people with CKD don't even know that they have CKD. So really be engaged, but also share, because other people will maybe then also ask questions to their physicians, will also be engaged, and then will also become maybe members of clinical trials. And that's important because, as I said before, the better we can get the trials running, the more investment we'll get into it.
So it's a great example, Markus, and it makes me think of what I mentioned earlier, that both of my parents have CKD associated with type 2 diabetes, but they were actually amongst the 90% that didn't know they had it. And it wasn't until I got to Bayer that I started looking at their labs and saying, well, wait a second, it actually looks like you have CKD. So I went with my mother to her primary care doctor and I said, I'm looking at this and I think she's got stage 3B kidney disease. And he's like, oh yeah, she's got kidney disease. And then my father separately, once I started having conversations with him, also was diagnosed with kidney disease. But it wasn't until we asked. And then there were no trials for her to be a part of, but we asked that question as well. And so it took us bringing it to them to really get the information that we needed.
That's a great example, Melissa. I really, to basically see that. It's a very personal one. So congratulations for that.
I'd like to thank again the vast number of industry partners that took the time to sit down and have a discussion with me. Through AAKP Global, launched in 2019, AAKP is engaged globally because we are committed to educating patients, leaders, and companies across the globe on the importance of kidney disease prevention, new innovations in treatment, and the opportunity to save more lives. We believe that united patient voice can drive innovation and the policy decisions that determine timely regulation and payment for new and safe treatments. Globally, AAKP is working with patients, medical professionals, researchers, and medical industry allies, such as those you just heard from, to cultivate a united consortium led by patients. AAKP believes that this global consortium can advance innovation and change kidney care in countries where health systems or infrastructures do not support patient-consumer choice or access to care treatments. Again, thank you to each of our industry partners for sharing with us the innovations their companies are working on or has available to improve kidney care, from prevention and diagnosis to transplantation or access to care treatments.